Welcome back, everyone. It's been quite a while. This is the review. I don't even know what number episode this is. I'm sorry. I'm going to say it's episode 22 or 23, somewhere in that range. It has definitely been a while, and there's a good reason for that. Despite academic obligations taking up a lot of our time, we also are watching the tournament like you guys are. And because we're doing a whole bunch of media for that, haven't had a lot of time to do a podcast episode. But now, first weekend's over. We got a couple days to rest and recover and get ready for the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight going on next weekend. That we're putting out a podcast episode today to cover all of that, as well as to review what just happened in the tournament last weekend. And to start, I just like to throw out there that this has probably been the most exciting tournament that I've ever watched, solely because you got a lot of upsets, but you also got a lot of chalk. Usually it's one way or the other, or you get like maybe one or two upsets and way too much chalk that's like, I kind of expected that. But no one's bracket was perfect by the end of the first 2 days. Let's just leave it at that. As soon as Ohio beat Virginia, everyone's bracket was just trashed, over, donezo. And we've seen great stories. We've seen Oral Roberts get to the Sweet 16, only the second 15 seed ever to do that after the Florida Gulf Coast University Eagles out of the ASUN, which I've been repping a lot this year. We've also seen stories like Jason Preston showing out for that Ohio squad. Disappointments, and there have been plenty of them. Looking at you, Ohio State. Looking at you, Illinois in the second round against Loyola Chicago. And Loyola Chicago, welcome back. Happy to see you. Your second tournament in a row that you've just like completely blitzed through really good teams. Great job. It's been a great tournament. It's going to keep being a great tournament. I think that as we go along now, we'll be seeing a little bit more in terms of chalk-like results, because do I think Oral Roberts is going to beat Arkansas? No. Could it happen? Absolutely it could, and that would be very exciting. And then you have stuff that's happened like every other year that you're kind of like over with by now, like Syracuse fans. I'm sorry that your team sucks in the regular season, finds a way into the tournament because they lose to Virginia on a buzzer beater, and then roll through their first two opponents because Buddy Boeheim scores like 70 points a game. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm happy I'm not a Syracuse fan, because I would just be anxious like all basketball season. I'm sure you guys are, and that's your problem to deal with. And who knows, maybe your team will go to the Final Four. I don't know. But that's my spiel for the day. Sam Bass is joining me. Matt Majinski was supposed to, but I guess he forgot again. So if he does hop on late, then you can be rest assured that we'll give him crap for it. For now, though, I welcome in Sam Bass, biggest fan of the now eliminated Virginia Cavaliers, second biggest fan of the also eliminated Ohio State Buckeyes, and third fan of the also eliminated Drake Bulldogs. So he is not a very happy camper. He took some time off from our Instagram lives over the course of the weekend to mourn and listen to Marvin's Room while laying face down in his bed. But he's back. He's got the chain on. He's in the middle of baseball season. He's got a couple of games going on this weekend, just off his first appearance for the Richmond. No, where are you at again?
Rams.
Thomas Jefferson Rams. There we go. I mean, in the same state, but yeah, in the same state. But we'll go ahead and just start off. So the tournament, guys, it was wild. And we're just going to go through a couple of categories here towards the latter half of the show. For now, though, Sam, I would just like to get your preliminary thoughts on what you saw in the first weekend of action.
I saw a lot of just blank because my face was down in my pillow crying as I blasted sad music. It was a very rough second day for me as my Virginia Cavaliers pretty much played the worst they played all season against Ohio. Give credit to Ohio, though. They were down 7 and they didn't give up.
It's the second time they've played the worst they've played all season in the first game of the tournament. So in the last 3 years. So that's
But I mean, the last time they lost in the first round, they came back the year after to win the national championship.
Yes, but then I mentioned to you in an earlier episode that Virginia is a very roller coaster team, and I think I was proven right on that point.
Absolutely.
To which you were adamantly against, and I think now you owe me an apology for the harsh criticism that you gave me on that day.
I think I agreed with you that they're a roller coaster because I lived the roller coaster. But
you did not agree with me. That was the day that you called Ohio State a perennial national championship team. You did not agree with me.
Well, I'm agreeing with you now, and as a Virginia fan, I can say that the highs are worth the lows. And I think that this is a low, and it obviously stinks. I'm watching March Madness, and I'm saying my team should be there. We should have been playing Gonzaga. We could have easily – it's all right because you know what? We made it. A lot of teams didn't even make it. Duke didn't make it. So, you know what? It's a good season when Virginia finishes better than Duke. So, little things that help me recover. But other than that, what a first round it was. And even round of 32, a lot of people's brackets are getting busted. Ohio State, Purdue, Texas, Illinois, all out. I think Baylor has surprised a lot of people because people were sleeping on Baylor. They didn't play as well as they had the rest in midseason after a COVID pause, got knocked out of the Big 12 tournament, but they're really playing super well. And I think that they can really have a shot at beating Gonzaga in the title game. Gonzaga's obviously been playing lights out, but other than that, I think the biggest surprise for me was Texas losing to Abilene Christian after winning the Big 12 championship, and that just shocked a lot of people. It was one of those games, I believe it was later in the round, and just kind of no one really expected it, and it just came out, and it was like, wow. So that's the kind of tournament it was, and what an incredible tournament it's been so far.
For sure, and looking back on some of the predictions that all of us made going in, especially as it pertains to the Big 10 and Big 12 and the amount of competitiveness they had in this tournament, the Big 10 was pretty much shut out.
Brendon, I'm going to cut you off. I got a call from Matt Majinski.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, what's up?
We're recording the podcast right now.
Would you like me to hop on now?
Sure.
Cool.
All right. See you soon. We'll have
this should be good. This should be good. Okay. Do you want me to just act like we're starting it again?
I don't know. Are you gonna edit it where this part's gonna be in the beginning?
No, we're just gonna trick him.
So the beginning part will already be in there.
Yes, it'll already be in there.
I kind of like that. Why not?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Little surprise for the review viewers.
Exactly. So everybody I know this isn't live, but please just keep your voices down and allow us to work here as we wait for the boss man to hop in. We'll get to the Big 10, like Pac-12 thing after he hops in, and we'll let him give his general thoughts. We'll ask him what he thinks of. Well, we won't ask him what he thinks of Syracuse yet because like he's going to be full.
I'd rather not.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a big story. Syracuse will be brought up later in the podcast, though, guys. All actually of the Sweet 16 teams will through our 3-point play. I won't tell you how, but it is a very hard question, but also a very easy one to answer today. So.
Oh, my computer! I just bought a new computer case and it's acting up on me.
Oh, that's too bad. Oh, nice ceiling. There we go.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to push it in.
At
there.
Michael Jordan, the ceiling is the roof.
Do you see the remix that they made when he said that?
Yes, I did.
That was incredible.
That'll be a future episode. Pop culture, just like references from college basketball.
I would love that.
Maybe a review of the year 2020, 2021 in college basketball will be our first episode for next season. For those of you who do not know this already, though, our final episode of this season will involve a larger scale quiz with the top 4 finishers, which is, I'm happy Sam Bass is here today because he has a chance to break into that top 4.
Am I not in the top 4?
You are not in the top 4 right now.
Who's in the top 4?
I will get to that later when we actually – you are currently sitting in – technically, you are 4th because there are 3 people tied for 3rd. But if they all got I may end up just being the top 3 because Carner, Waldman, and Steve Kirk haven't been on here in a time, dude. Like,
so it'll probably be me, Matt Majinski, and Ariel.
Yeah,
that's a crazy good duo. Have you had Colin on here?
I have not had Colin on here yet. He is a very busy man. He thinks his own podcast is better than the one for the website he works for.
Man.
And he just talks about he talks about all the sports, not just college basketball. And technically, it's probably a little more respect to him because we only talk about men's college basketball, which in this it can be a little I don't know. Maybe we should do a CBBW part of the website. I feel like that we could do a pretty good job covering that, especially with the way Paige Packers played last night.
Matt Carner actually brought that up, and we were considering.
He did. Oh. I do know somebody at my alma mater who's looking to get into sports writing, and I think she should be very interested in that. I will reach out to her and ask if she would be interested in doing something like that.
Yeah, maybe the 2021 season.
Yeah, why not? Start now. I understand that may be taken the wrong way in context, and people will be like, "Oh, why didn't you do it before?" Well, because we only have. Oh, there he is. Hey, Matt, we're about to start recording here. We started about a minute ago. Just talking about some random stuff, but we're gonna go ahead and start now. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, I had the the conference calls for the games this weekend.
No, yeah, you're good. You're good.
And it just that stuff was rough.
It's good to see that you're wearing a shirt for a team that didn't make the tournament. So it's wonderful. But we're go ahead and get started. If you guys want to mute your mics real quick, and we'll start this up. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the review, everybody. I believe it's been a very long time. It's been a very long time. Let's just leave it at that. And I just got to say, it's wonderful to have you guys back for episode 22 or 23. I don't know. And we're already 10 minutes in, and Matt Majinski showed up late. So congratulations, Matt. We have been live this entire time. So happy you could join us and explain yourself to our wide-ranging and loving audience. You can go ahead and unmute yourself now. The embarrassment is over. But Sam and I have been talking about the tournament as a whole right now. We talked about him crying into his pillow to Marvin's room after Virginia lost. And we'd just like to get your general thoughts on the tournament before we move on to some other things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the warm introduction, Brendon. I really do.
Always, my friend. You know that you are my favorite guest solely because I see you every day and I can talk way more smack to you than anybody else. Because I am better than you at basketball. I beat you one-on-one yesterday on our wellness day. Twice, actually. I beat him twice. One of them he IG lived, so it was even better. He stopped it when he was down 4. So he's A, loser, B, a coward, and C, was unwilling to jump into a lake. But that's okay. That's okay. I have more respect for Sam Bass now, and that's all I got to say. So Matt, please do continue your very intelligent spiel on your tournament takes.
Yeah. So when you look at what's happened so far, I think we can all say that it's been probably the craziest tournament as far as upsets go. I'll say that I wish there weren't as many upsets. I'm okay with a UCLA or a Syracuse, a team that is a program that has built themselves to where they might be 11 seeds, but they get a couple wins and come on. You know these teams as programs aren't 11 seeds. They have great coaches and they've done so much in the past. And you love the Oral Roberts story. But I think that it's just sometimes you don't want to see as many upsets because all of a sudden it just takes away from the upsets, if that makes sense. I think when you have so many upsets, it makes it less of a commodity. I don't know if that's the right word, a spectacle maybe of when the upset actually does happen. I hope that it's just kind of the year that we're in with COVID and the lack of fans. I know that might be an odd way of looking at it because it's a neutral site anyways, but maybe just the fact that there's hardly any fans. The good teams can't play off of their fans, especially in these first couple games, because we know that Purdue and North Texas, if there were fans, it'd be mostly Purdue fans anyways. They'd probably at least have an advantage, probably would have won that game. But besides that point, I think it's been great. You still got the three of the 4 1 seeds in the Sweet 16. I think that's what you want to see. Never bad seeing a 1 seed go down, but always good if the majority of them can move on past the first weekend. And then there's been some great games. There's been Obviously, we mentioned the upsets. We've had some real clutch shots, and it's had a little bit of everything. It's too bad that we had to see some generational players go like McKinley Wright and Luka Garza so early into the tournament. Would have been cool to see them in the second weekend, but I know we still got a lot of great basketball ahead and plenty of good players left in this tourney.
Oh, you mentioned that number 1 seed being knocked out, and that was the second discussion point that Sam and I were going to touch on before you called us and asked, "Oh, hey, can I can join now, right? Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, you could. You could also show up on time after I told you this yesterday, but it's whatever. It's okay. I'm not salty. I'm not petty at all. That number 1 seed out of the Big Ten, and the Big Ten has had a rough start to this tournament. On the other hand, though, Pac-12, Bill Walton's Conference of Champions. Happy that you can actually back that up and make us all regret trashing Bill Walton. But they just took their first loss last night. Shout out Colorado. But they're going to have to take another loss here pretty soon because USC and UCLA both play each other. So rough draw there for the Pac-12. But let's talk about the Big Ten and the Pac-12 and just how different the perception was going into the tournament versus where it is now. And we'll start with Sam.
Well, going into the tournament, everyone was thinking that the Big 12 and the Big 10 were the biggest powerhouse conferences, and then you had the ACC and the Pac-12 who were in down years. And you get to the tournament, and the ACC obviously didn't perform as well as it would hoped, but you have Syracuse and you have Florida State both in the Sweet 16, and then the Pac-12 just shocked everyone. I think some people had the feeling that Oregon would perform better than what their seeding would say. They have a very good big 3 in Figueroa, Chris Duarte, and Eugenio Murillo. But then, and then USC, everyone had the perception that they were pretty good. UCLA shocked everyone beating Michigan State, in my opinion. I think everyone had Michigan State winning that game and then just kept winning. And then Oregon State, coming off a hot Pac-12 tournament, beat Tennessee and then beat Oklahoma State. That shocked everybody. Oklahoma State was a title favorite for a lot, including Matt Majinski right here. Big on Oklahoma State going into the tournament, and Oregon State just blew the doors off them. It was shocking. It was shocking to me.
Yeah, Sam, I'll jump in now. And as far as the Big Ten goes, I think there's something to be said about conferences that play tough games every single game. You get to the NCAA tournament, maybe it takes a little bit out of them as far as, wow, you just had a grueling conference schedule. I think you see it with the ACC. I don't know if you saw it with the Big East as much, because I know that UConn would go on a couple of tournament runs. That they won some tournaments while they were in the Big East. Louisville had a big run. You had some in the Big East. I don't know if it was as much of a problem, but that also could be that because there were 16 teams in that Big East conference. So even though you might have a year where 9 or 10 of them are getting in, you still had the DePauls, the South Floridas, the Seton Halls, the Providences that weren't as good. So the other teams had some days off. I think the Big Ten, you didn't have that this year. It was, besides the exception of Nebraska, I mean, any other year, Northwestern might have had a chance to make the tournament. It's just that they had the toughest year possible. So I think that's part of it. And I also think Iowa's defense just wasn't good enough. Oregon is definitely very, very underrated. And that says a lot about the Pac-12, and that the Pac-12 is underrated. I mean, there was a point in the season where UCLA was undefeated in conference, so about 10-0 in conference, and they weren't even hardly inside the top 20 of the AP poll. And I think that goes to show that the Pac-12, and I know this is maybe a discussion for another time, but I think in the future, if the Pac-12 wants to really be on the national stage, they've got to think about every week playing 1 or 2 games at 7 p.m. So that the people on the East Coast can watch them. Because it's not like these AP poll writers, like some of these guys, they're trying to get as much as they can out of the Pac-12, but it's tough when you're covering a game at 7 p.m., you're at an arena for 5-6 hours, and then you're asked to put on a Pac-12 game at 11 p.m. I mean, that's a big ask for some of these East Coast writers where college basketball is the most prevalent. And it's unfair to the Pac-12, but it's unfortunately the landscape of it all.
Well, as far as we know, the Pac-12's start to this tournament, I believe they got up to 8-0 through the first two rounds. And correct me if I'm wrong, it is one of the best, if not the best, that we've ever seen. And we don't actually have the stat to back it up if it's the best start that a conference has had, but it's definitely up there. I will move into superlatives for these first two rounds of the tournament, guys, and we'll start with the biggest surprise, or you know what, the biggest chalk pick to you guys. So, who was the team that has done really well that you all expected to get well or do well, and Gonzaga doesn't count?
I'll start. If Gonzaga doesn't count, it's gonna take some thinking here, but Alabama's not a bad pick. I think everyone was really high on Alabama. They had a real great conference season, and they're just making easy work of the teams they play, advancing by the day. And they got some athletes on that team who can run, and they're showing that they're in much better shape than their opponents, and that can really translate. Because even when the shot's not working, you can create in transition. I mentioned in one of my takeaway articles, I forget which one, I believe it was an Arkansas game, maybe Arkansas Colgate. Arkansas was not making their shots early, and then they started creating in transition and just pulled away, and Colgate could not keep up. They're not used to playing at that fast pace. You notice in these games, a lot of these mid-major teams start off very slow if it's a fast game because they're not used to playing that fast. So Alabama can play very fast, and they're doing just that. And when they're making shots, that's a whole nother element that they add to their offense. And they're a Final Four pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a real good pick, Sam. I'm going to go with another 1 seed in Baylor, rolled by Hartford. That wasn't even close. And then even that Wisconsin game, Baylor controlled for most of it. I know that in the second half, you try to make a broadcast interesting, but Wisconsin was down pretty much 8 to 12 points for that whole second half. Wisconsin's been a top 25 team at parts of the season, so no one should be surprised that they're within striking distance. But Baylor really never let them get close to winning that game in the second half. And I think it shows a lot about Baylor as well, because I know some people thought that North Carolina might have advanced to play the Bears in the second round, and that didn't happen. And Baylor took care of a Wisconsin team that shut down UNC. And again, it's going with a 1 seed, but that's what chalk is. And I think the Bears have advanced to the Sweet 16 pretty easily.
All right, well, then we'll move into the most disappointing team of the tournament, and there are definitely many of them. And Sam, Virginia doesn't count for you. Matt, I don't know what team doesn't count for you, so let's just, whatever.
I'm going to go with Duke because they didn't even make it. I'm just kidding. Although I'd love to pick Duke, that's a disappointing team. I think that anytime they don't win a championship, it's a disappointment to Duke fans, but that's just being spoiled. I mentioned it before Matt hopped on that Texas just won the Big 12 tournament. I think the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball this season. They're loaded. And then they fall to Abilene Christian in-state school with Texas, and wasn't really a noteworthy game. Nothing that anyone was paying big attention to, like Ohio State, Oral Roberts, or even Purdue, North Texas. I feel like Texas, Abilene Christian, no one was really watching that closely, and it just kind of popped out. I don't know if that was just my end, or if it was the whole college basketball world. That was the most shocking to me. And I think Texas had a chance to make a run. That was probably the most evenly skilled region of the bracket, and they didn't even have a chance to try to make a run at it. So I think they're the most disappointing.
I could go with 2 here, and I think they're in the same conference, both for different reasons, and that's Connecticut and Georgetown. And I don't even say that from a perspective from Syracuse, but it's more the fact that Connecticut was a team that, now I had Maryland winning that first round game, but people that picked Connecticut to the Elite Eight, I didn't question, because James Bouknight is one of the best players in this tournament going into it, and they did not look good. They really didn't look great. They looked soft and passive at times, and Maryland really controlled them. And it's more like, on paper, sure, Connecticut was probably only supposed to maybe win that first game, but people thought they could beat Alabama. And I think from that, you could say that it was a little bit disappointing for Connecticut when you have a star player and you get knocked out in the first round. And from the Georgetown perspective, real quick, the fact that Georgetown making the tournament, being that hot, and then absolutely not even making it a game. They were out of it within 5 minutes into the game once Colorado just started shooting lights out from deep. So I think for Georgetown, just not being able to make it a game, I would have liked to see them at least, you got hot at the end of the Big East. Can you keep it up in March, in the true March Madness against a good Colorado team? They weren't able to do it. And I think it kind of hurts the Big East a little bit because you knew you had Villanova and Creighton. You tried to say you had Georgetown and Connecticut. That didn't really look too well in the first round.
All right, well, last superlative here, and this will be a doozy, but some of these teams aren't in the tournament anymore. We'll actually do, I'm going to throw a superlative out there, and I think you'll agree with it. The least surprising upset, Loyola Chicago, because they're just – Porter Moser has done a terrific job there, and I think if there was any team that we could have picked to beat a 1 seed early out of that 8-9 group, it would have been Loyola Chicago. So I'll just leave it at that. No need for you guys to comment because I know you agree with me because I have telepathic abilities like that, right? But we'll go with most surprising upset for our final superlative here. And I have a feeling I know what Sam's going to say, but he's probably not going to say it because he doesn't want to bring it up again.
I was not going to say Virginia, but before I get into my most surprising upset, I also want to give one more most disappointing team. They didn't actually play. That's Virginia Commonwealth, VCU, getting knocked out with COVID. That's just devastating. I feel for their program, feel for their coaches and their players. Just a terrible way to end the season, so I'm hoping they're bouncing back well. Least surprising upset, I had this marked down in my bracket, one of the few games that wasn't chalk that I got right, and that was Oregon over Iowa. Iowa does not play great defense, and I had a feeling that Oregon would really take advantage of that, and they have Omoruye, who played Garza really well. Garza had a huge game, yes, but he was able to score on his own and create on offense, and I think Oregon had control most of the game. Like, they were playing real well. Their offense was clicking the whole game. That is a Final Four or an Elite Eight team. Excuse me. They are in the same region as Gonzaga, but that is an Elite Eight team, and they, as we mentioned before, extremely underseeded.
Yeah, I will say, just to add on to Brendon's, like an upset that you could see coming. I honestly think that Syracuse and Oregon State deserve, and UCLA, I think all three of those deserve to be in that category as well. But to your point, Loyola Chicago is not an 8 seed. People should know that by now. They were underseeded, and I think the other 3 teams were too. I just, when you play programs, Pac-12 programs like UCLA and Oregon State that are hot, and a team like Syracuse where the zone can change anything, should never be too surprising of an upset. But I will go for this question with Texas as far as most disappointing upset and most surprising upset, I guess you could say, would be Abilene Christian would be the right way to answer that superlative. Just because, I did a ranking I took the top player from each team and ranked them 1 through 68. So each team got their best player. I know that was kind of tough in some situations, like Gonzaga, who to even pick for their best player. For Abilene Christian, they had no one at all to choose from. So the fact that they take that team style of basketball and were able to just shut down Texas, and a good Texas scoring team, really just blows my mind. And then they didn't even play great at all again in the following round, so against UCLA. So I think the fact that they were able to pull off that monstrous upset says a lot about them, and also says a lot about Texas, because Abilene Christian didn't look good at all again in that round of 32. So for them to beat Texas, I know Shaka Smart's job is now in question, and I don't want to ever call on any man's job, but they at least have to look at it, because I think he hasn't really advanced them in March, and that's the most important part for a coach.
That it is for sure. Well, guys, because we have a 40-minute Zoom meeting limit, we're going to move on here pretty quickly to our 3-point play. Matt Majinski is safely in the top 4 solely because he's the only one who ever shows up for these anymore. And despite some poor performances, he leads the leaderboard with 8 points over the course of the year. We're going to make some changes to the 3-point play next year, but we'll save those for a later episode. Ariel Putterman, who also never shows up for these anymore, is in second with 7. Then you got 3 guys tied for third who also have not shown up in quite a while. Matt Carter, Matt Waldman, Steve Kirk. Sam Bass, though, has a chance to move into the top 3. And if those 3 guys still don't show up, the final quiz of the year, which will be our final episode of the year, will only involve the top 3 because I don't want to get 6 people into one room. That just seems insane. But today, we're rolling with the secondary rules, guys. So point totals are based off of the number of correct answers you give me. It just so happens today we're talking about the Sweet 16. So if you get 4 of the teams completely right in regard to the question, you get a point. 8 teams, 2, you get it. Like every 4 teams, you get a point, right? So the good part for you guys is there are no strikes today because I don't want this to go too short and for you guys to embarrass yourselves. I don't think that it would have mattered if you had strikes or not because this should at least be pretty easy for you, okay? You good with that? You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil. I know Sam has one. Matt, you definitely have someone that countered to your right because I've been to your apartment enough to know that you have paper lying around everywhere. But so what you're going to be doing today, you're going to be listing the leading scorer for each Sweet 16 team. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you are listing this leading scorer for the entire season to date. So every game they've played, regular season and postseason. You will also give me the leading scorer for that team through all of their NCAA tournament games. So in some cases, maybe the same person. In other cases, maybe different. You'll never know. You must get both scores right to earn the point for the team. Am I clear? All right. I am going to need you guys to unmute yourselves because with the sticky note I have pulled up with the answers, it cuts off half the screen. So I can't see half of Matt's screen. But I will put you guys down for your scores. And we're going to start with the team we just talked about out of the Pac-12, the Oregon State Beavers. Remember, you must tell me which one of the scorers leads them from the entire season, which one leads them in tournament scoring.
I do want to clarify one thing.
Yes.
We're going by total points scored, not points average.
No, we are going by points per game.
Okay.
And honestly, I don't know if it would make that big a difference because if you score the most points on your team, you probably average the most points per game.
Well, unless there's an injury, I'm thinking.
It's fair. Yes, that's very fair. Give me a thumbs up when you guys are ready with your answers. Sam is ready. Matt is ready. All right, guys, go ahead and show me and tell me. Sam says, yeah, Matt, I can't hear you. You're muted. Thank you. Sam says Ethan Thompson for both. Matt says that's
Ethan
really
Thompson for both.
And that is correct for both of you. It is Ethan Thompson. A pretty easy one if I gotta say so myself, guys. That was all right. So both of you on the board with 1 point. The next team up is the Loyola Chicago Ramblers.
Do we even need to write this down?
Do you want to just say it? Like,
I think this one's rather obvious, no?
well, if it's so obvious, then tell me your answer. Who do you think?
Cameron Krutwig for both.
Okay, Matt, what's your answer?
I was going to go with Cameron Krutwig for both. I don't even know who I'd put for the other answer.
Yeah.
Well, that's too bad because Cameron Krutwig was leading scorer for the season, but Lucas Williamson is averaging 17.5 points in the tournament. So, sorry, boys, but you're not getting a point for that one.
Man, what?
Hey, man, with these questions, I roll deep. Let me just go with that. Next up is the Villanova Wildcats, though. If you guys just want to, like, say them too, we can do that. Like, it may take long to, like, write them, but...
This is actually a decently tough one.
Right, because Gillespie's out right now, and you don't know if he averaged more points than everybody on the team before he got hurt, right?
All right, I got mine.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Sam. Go ahead and lead us off.
I went Gillespie for the season and then Robinson Earl for the tournament.
All right, Matt.
I went Robinson Earl for the season and Justin Moore for the tournament.
Well, Jeremiah Robinson Earl is the leading scorer in the tournament for Villanova, guys. He is also the leading scorer over the entire season. He averaged 16. Gillespie averaged 14. So, yeah, one of those things where the injury probably would have helped Gillespie if Jeremiah Robinson Earl wasn't like really good. But you guys are 1 of 3 right now. And we move on to the powerhouse out of the Big 12, the Baylor Bears. This is a tough one, too, because they're a very balanced team. So it could be really any one of those 5 starters. May even be a guy off the bench. You never know. Matt is ready. Sam, are you ready?
I know who led them season, but I'm gonna switch it. I had him for both, but
Okay.
I switched.
All right. So, Sam, who do you have?
I have Butler for the season,
Okay.
and then I have Teague for the tournament.
All right, Matt, what do you have?
I have Butler for the season. I have Mitchell for the tournament.
Ooh. Well, you're both right on the season. One of you is correct on the tournament.
I feel like it's me because Teague didn't have the best game in the round of 32.
I remember he had a
But
great
he
game.
might have had a big first-round game.
He did.
Well, he had a good enough game because Maceo Teague is the leading scorer for the Baylor Bears in the tournament. 15.5 points a game. Jared Butler had 16.9 over the course of the regular season. Sam Bass halfway to a point to move him into a tie for 3rd place. Now we head on to everyone's favorite Cinderella, the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles. I know you guys are going to get the season score because it was a pretty big thing we talked about coming into the tournament. But let's see if you can get the tournament score. Also, do you guys know how to pronounce the guy's last name, like actually? Because it does not sound like you think it should sound.
No.
When I heard Ian Eagle say it the first time, I was like, really? That's how you say that? Anyway, when you guys are ready, give me a thumbs up. Matt's ready. Sam's ready. All right. Sam, who you got?
Max Abrams for the season, opener for the tournament.
You completely botched both of those names, but okay. Matt, what's your answer?
Whatever.
I also had Max Asmas for the season.
That was a little closer that time. And
is it O'Banor? Is that? But I have
it's Asmus and O'Banner, and you're both correct. Asmus averaged 24.5 points per game over the season. O'Banner's averaging 29 in the tournament, guys.
Absurd.
Those two are just a 2-man wrecking crew. It's ridiculous what they're doing. And they'll be playing against this team in the next round, the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Okay.
All right, Sam's ready. Matt's ready. All right, Sam, who you got?
I'm locking in Moses Moody for both.
All right, Matt, your answer?
Same here.
Well, Moses Moody was the leading scorer for the Razorbacks this season, guys. He averaged 17.1 a game, and he's averaging about the same in the tournament. Justin Smith, though, is averaging a little under 25 a game for the Razorbacks right now. So, unfortunately, you don't get the point on that one. You're probably going to get the points on this next one, though, because the next one is Syracuse. Matt's cringing because he knows if he does get part of this wrong, which it would be very easy to get part of this wrong, then he will be devastated. But Sam's just not caring at all. We'll go with Matt first just to see what he says.
Well, I'll start with the tournament, and that's Buddy Boeheim. For the season, I have Quincy Guerra.
All right, Sam?
I have Buddy for both. He really had a great end to his regular season.
Quincy Guerra is a good player, Matt. He's really coming on as of late. But Buddy Boeheim is even better. He averaged 18 over the course of the season to lead all scorers on Syracuse. And yes, he's averaging just shy of 28 points per game in the tournament. So, Matt, your Syracuse knowledge fails you once again. Sam has earned a point and moves into a tie for 3rd place with those 3 guys I mentioned earlier who never come on anymore. But we'll move on now to the team that Syracuse is playing in the next round. I think you have like a little pattern going on here. You guys see I went by the actual schedule and when they're playing. The Houston Cougars. One of the biggest stories of the second round, actually, with what's his name? That he was like had a hit pointer in the first game, and then he like played basically the entire second game on that. I don't remember what his name is, but Giroux, that's what it is. Whatever his name is, Giroux. I was a trooper in that second round game. But thumbs up when you're ready. All right, Sam Bass, who you got?
I got Quentin Grimes for both.
All right, Matt.
I have Grimes for the season and Giroux for the tournament.
Well, Giroux, despite being heroic with his injury, is not the leading scorer for the tournament, Matt. That is Quentin Grimes, and Quentin Grimes was also the leading scorer for the season. Sam Bass is killing it right now. He's got 5. Matt's got 2. Matt doesn't even have a point yet. But yes, Quentin Grimes averaged 18 points per game in the season. He's averaging 20 right now in the tournament straight up. We move on now to the Big East, though. The Creighton Blue Jays. And we got 10 minutes to go, so we got to get through this pretty quickly, boys.
Come on.
All right. Matt, you good? All right, Matt Majinski, you're the Big East expert here, but let's see if you're an expert on the Creighton Blue Jays leading scorers.
I went with what I feel like is the obvious, and it could be wrong because they have so many scorers, but Marcus Zagorowski.
For both? And Sam?
Both as well, Marcus Zagorowski.
That is correct. Marcus Zagorowski, despite Sam Bass saying that he's been trailing off at the end of the year, still the leading scorer for the Blue Jays on the season with 15.7, in the tournament with 18.5. Now we move on to a very, very tough one because, like Matt Majinski said, Gonzaga's got a lot of dudes on their team. Who are the Zags' leading scorers for the season and for the tournament? I love that look on Matt's face because I know it just means that he has no idea. Or he has an idea, but he's wondering if all of my takes on Gonzaga are going to get to his head and make him choose a player he's not sure about, and then he gets it wrong. He is 1 point away from getting a full point in this edition of the 3-point play. But let's see if he's got it. Matt, are you ready? And Sam is also ready. Matt, who do you have?
On the season, I went with Corey Kispert, and in the tournament, I know he had a real big game. Hopefully that was enough, and I went with Drew Timme.
And Sam?
Same exact thing. Timme dropped, I think it was 30 against Oklahoma. So I got Kispert for the season, Timme for the tournament.
Well, guys, Corey Kispert averaged 19 points per game in the season. That was good enough for that answer. So that part's correct. He's also averaging 19 points per game in the tournament, as far as I could tell. I may be a little bit off on that. Drew Timme did have that 30-point game, but can you tell me how many points he had in the first game they played in the tournament?
No, I didn't watch that game.
He had 10, so he averaged 20, so he is the correct answer. You both get that one right. Right now, Sam Bass has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points, which is good for about 1 3/4, even though we don't count non-full points here. Matt Majinski finally notches a point on the day as we move on to the Florida State Seminoles, another team that is very hard to guess who their leading scorers were.
Oh, man. This has got to be the toughest one.
Yeah, they're so.
Oh, just wait, man. You're not going to get all these. There's no way. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready, boys, and I will. Sam is ready. Matt, are you good?
Sure.
All right, go for it, Matt. Who you got?
I just went with MJ Walker for both, and I know I'm wrong.
All right, Sam?
I took MJ Walker for regular season. I know that's right. I had him in my ACC first team just because Florida State was up there. He was the high scorer, so it seemed like the safe pick. Anthony Polite had a huge game against Colorado, so I picked him for highest score in the tournament.
Was that a higher register take right there? Like you're not even sure if you're right?
Higher register take right there. Trademark for the review podcast.
No, that's actually a trademark for the Rich Eisen show. They beat us to it. Sorry, boys.
All right.
But your ACC knowledge has helped you out yet again. Anthony Polite averaging 17 a game in the tournament. MJ Walker only averaged 12.3 in the season, but that was good enough for the leading scorer on Florida State that runs deep. Like, my goodness, what a deep team that Leonard Hamilton has pretty much every year. All right, next up is Matt's favorite team to hate on because they beat Cam Thomas this last weekend, the Michigan Wolverines.
Oh, this is a tough one.
Yeah.
They're all tough, boys. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready. We're coming up on 5 minutes left in this Zoom meeting before we have to actually take a break and then get to our picks for the Sweet 16. Didn't think we need a break today, but it is what it is.
All right, I got mine.
All right. Matt, are you good to go too? All right, Matt, who do you have as Michigan's leading scorer or scorers?
I went with Livers on the season and Dickinson in the tournament.
And Sam?
I believe it's Dickinson in the regular season, and he got in foul trouble in that LSU game. So I know it wasn't him in the tournament. And Smith had a rough game. They were really taking advantage of his lack of height in that LSU game as well. So I went with Eli Brooks for the high tournament scorer.
Sam Bass is on a roll right now. Eli Brooks, that 21-point game really helped him in the stat column. He is the leading scorer for the Michigan Wolverines in the tournaments. Wild, though, guys. We got to move on here really quickly, though. UCLA.
Are we counting that first 4 game?
Yes, we are.
Oh, man. All right.
All right, you guys ready?
You can go to Sam. I might. Gosh.
No, I'm not going to Sam, so you can change your answer.
No, you can go to me. It's fine. He's been going
No,
first.
it's in. I don't even have a player. Like I can't
Really?
off the dome like that. I do not watch.
So are you just
West-
taking the are you just taking a loss here?
If you can give me 10 seconds,
1,
if I can get it in 10
2,
seconds.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right,
Yeah.
Matt's taking the L. Sam Bass.
I went with Johnny Juzang. He is the regular season. I know that. He's a Kentucky transfer. And I went with him for the tournament. I know that Jaime Hodges is like a fan favorite now, but Juzang's had equally great games. I'm going Johnny Juzang for both.
A lot of alliterations on the UCLA team. Johnny Juzang, Jaime Hodges, but Johnny Juzang's the best of both. Hodges did have 30 points, but he had a pretty subpar game in the second game of the tournament. Johnny Juzang averaging 22.3 a game. Sam Bass is correct yet again. We now move on to the Crimson Tide, Alabama. Really good shooting team, very balanced team as well, so another tough one. All right, Matt is ready.
I'm good.
And Sam is ready. Sam, who are your leading scorer or scorers for Alabama?
Leading scorer. This team is tough for me. I had Javon Quinterly as the leading scorer, and then Herb Jones is the tournament leading scorer. I think those both could be wrong.
And Matt?
And I went with Jones for both of them.
Well, you are both incorrect. It is Jaden Shackelford, leading scorer on the season and the tournament. 14.3 in the season, 15.5 in the tournament. We'll move on to now the one team who's only played one game, so this is going to be the easiest of them for you guys. The Oregon Ducks. Literally just who the leading scorer was in their one tournament game, and then you got to figure out who the season leading scorer is. So that's that's a tough look there.
I got mine.
Matt, are you good too? All right, Matt, who you got?
I went with Duarte for both.
And Sam?
As did I.
And that is correct. Chris Duarte is the leading scorer for both. And finally, their Pac-12 foe, the USC Trojans.
All right, I'm good.
Really? That was
Yep.
quick. All right, Matt, who is it?
I went with Evan Mobley for both.
Sam?
I went with Evan Mobley as well for both.
Evan Mobley was the leading scorer for the Trojans in the regular season. He averaged 16.5 points a game. The leading scorer for the tournament averages 16 a game. It is a Mobley.
It's his brother.
It's his brother, Isaiah Mobley. That's all we got for the three-point play. Let's count up the tally here. Matt Majinski only got 1 point out of that, so tough look for him. Sam Bass got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Only 11. So he gets 2 points on the day, but that is good enough to move him into third place in the three-point play standings. Congratulations, guys. Matt, you built a little bit of a lead for yourself. Sam is now only 3 points behind. We have to take a break because the Zoom meeting is making us, but we'll be back in just a sec with our picks with the Sweet 16. Stay with us. This is the review.
Gee, just push the button.
Back on the review, episode 22, 23. What's it matter? We're probably only going to have 25 episodes in this thing anyway. But Matt Majinski and Sam Bass are here. Sam coming off a stellar performance, probably the best performance we've had in the three-point play, secondary rules this season. Matt Majinski's, though, still holding his lead because he's shown up more than anyone else. He's been on it like 7 times, and he has 9 points to show for it. So in terms of scoring average, he's not that great. Yeah. We're going to move into our picks, though, and then we'll get out of here, guys. You know the Sweet 16 matchups, but do you know who's going to win? We know both of your brackets have been busted plenty of times. Pretty much all of Matt's Final Four is done, I think. All of my Final Four is too, except Gonzaga. But we'll go ahead and start with the first game. It's a 2:40 start on CBS. Loyola Chicago favored by 6.5 against an upstart Oregon State squad. We'll go to Matt and then Sam. You're muted, Matt.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most even matchups in this entire Sweet 16. The way that Oregon State's been scoring the ball has been phenomenal, but I just think that Cameron Krutwig inside will be too much of a problem. And for that reason, I have Loyola Chicago going on one more. Their defense also can stop the Beavers.
Yeah, I agree with that. Krutwig and Williamson have both been there, made the Final Four back in 2018. That's great experience. And they got Sister Jean on their side, so anything is possible. I have Loyola Chicago in this one as well. I think Krutwig will have an outstanding game. He's been great in the paint. Honestly, surprising me going against Missouri Valley the whole season and then stepping up to an Illinois squad, Kofi Coburn. That was a stellar performance, and I think that they'll keep rolling.
I'm going to go ahead and go against the grain here. While I love Loyola Chicago and what they do and Sister Jean's prayers of having teams shoot less than 30% from three, which is absurd, especially for a guy like Matt, who is a devout Christian, Catholic, I don't know. I keep forgetting, like, they're very similar somehow, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody's religious beliefs. But Oregon is kind of petty. They were picked 12th in the Pac-12. They were a 12 seed. They have that mojo going. And when Ethan Thompson went out of that game against Oklahoma State, Maurice Kalou came in and just blew everybody away against his former team. And Oregon State is just as deep as Loyola Chicago when you got guys like Tariq Silver coming off the bench and knocking down like step-back 18-footers. It was a very good showing for Oregon State. And Silva inside, I think, can handle Cameron Krutwig and has the height and length to dominate the glass. We'll move on to Villanova up against Baylor. Toughest test that Baylor has faced in this tournament so far. But again, Villanova, without Colin Gillespie, will they be able to pull what may amount to a pretty big upset?
I think that if you're going to look at one seed on upset alert, it would be Baylor. And that's simply why I had, like, one pick that I actually got right was having Villanova to the Sweet 16, because I figured that Jay Wright, the best coach in college basketball, would be able to mend the loss of Gillespie against, the first couple of rounds and the teams that they played. Against Baylor, I think that ends. I think that Jared Butler, Masio Teague, Davion Mitchell, and that whole Bears crew is just going to be way too much for Villanova to handle. Baylor's offensive and defensive efficiency are top 10 in the country throughout the season. And I just think that for those reasons, Villanova can keep it close, but Baylor will find the way to win, and they will advance to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, I'm going to bash myself a little bit. I had Villanova losing to Winthrop.
I did too, man. It was tough.
Jay Wright really proved me wrong. He's someone who knows how to consistently win in March. And although he made it to the Sweet 16 without Gillespie, I agree with Matt. Baylor just runs too deep, and they're so hard to guard. And then they play excellent defense. They're just so good all around. And I think Scott Drew finally breaks through and makes the Final Four.
I agree with you guys. I am taking Baylor. They're my 7-point favorites, also on CBS. That game starts at 5:15 p.m. Eastern time. We'll move on to everyone's favorite Cinderella. The winner of Villanova-Baylor will actually play the winner of this game. The Oral Roberts, Ace Misses and O Banners, two-man wrecking crew. They basically should be their mascot. Golden Eagles, like it's two Golden Eagles and pretty much everyone else. Maybe Lotzis gets a rebound. Juergens has a breakaway layup. I don't know. Going up against an Eric Musselman-led Arkansas team. And remember, Musselman's been in this situation before with Nevada and had a pretty big comeback win over, I believe, Texas in going into the Sweet 16 a couple years back. But who will win, the Fighting Musselmans or the Fighting Ace Misses?
Yeah, I've got Arkansas in this one just because Oral Roberts' offense has carried them this far, but Arkansas can really score the ball as good as anyone in this tournament. I think they're athletic enough to stop some of that Oral Roberts high-flying shooting and the style of play that they have. And Arkansas is playing the best underrated basketball in this tournament. All eyes move to Gonzaga and some of those other teams, Baylor, how we mentioned before. I think when you look at Arkansas, not a lot of eyes have moved there, but they've had two pretty convincing wins, and I think they'll move on one more round.
Yeah, I talked about this before. Another upset that I incorrectly picked was Colgate over Arkansas, and Colgate had control through a good portion of that game, and Arkansas really sped it up, and just Colgate was not able to keep up with them. And I think even when Arkansas isn't shooting well, they don't need to rely on their shot-making abilities because they can create in transition. I think that's huge. I don't see Oral Roberts being able to keep up with them. Ohio State doesn't really play a crazy fast pace, neither does Florida. I think that Arkansas is a whole other beast for them. I don't even know if they're, especially towards the end of the game, Arkansas can really pull away and make it a convincing win to the Elite Eight.
Well, the last time we saw a 15 seed this deep in the tournament were those Florida Gulf Coast Eagles back in 2012. We mentioned that earlier. Will the Golden Eagles break that trend? No, they will not. I am also taking Arkansas -11. I'm not a betting expert. That's Nick Musial's thing, but he also is one of those guys that hasn't come on here. Colin, Nick, get your butts on here. We could really use you guys for more diversity and segments and stuff. So if you watch this, which you should because you work for the site, answer my group chat messages and come onto the show. Jesus, what else could you guys be doing besides school, right? Speaking of school, Matt and I both go to this school, Syracuse, on one of those, runs where they're a double-digit seed and they just get hot at the right time and have one guy who scores all their points and win. They're taking on Houston. Houston 6-point favorites. Does Syracuse keep the run going and make Syracuse fans hate them even more from their regular season woes?
I think that they do. And again, our opinions might not count as much as Sam's, but I just go.
Mine does. Yours doesn't because I haven't been a lifelong Syracuse fan. You have, so please continue.
I just see Syracuse having the 2-3 zone just being way too much. That's been the main reason that they've been able to win these games. I mean, obviously we cannot deny 15 threes and then 14 threes in the two tournament games. Great percentages, but that 2-3 zone stopped a San Diego State team to 62 points. That was tied for their third lowest on the season. West Virginia averages near 77. They almost got there, but it took them 37% chance or percent on field goals. That's not great. The 2-3 zone has shut down these teams. Can Houston beat it? The one thing I'll say is I think they can. They do have three-point shooting ability. They played one matchup zone all season long. That was one of their 3 losses against Tulsa. Tulsa beat them. Houston's tallest player is just 6'8". That ain't gonna fly against this zone.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree here. Syracuse, it's always, to me, it's been confusing why they make it so these deep runs in the tournament, and they really have subpar seasons in conference play. And then I saw that game against San Diego State, and they looked lost against the zone, taking deep threes. They're not even trying to work it inside. And I think ACC coaches, and when Syracuse wasn't the Big East coaches, really found a way to beat that zone. And when you play them once a year, that's not your number one concern. So you have few days, like a week to prepare, and that's not enough time. You need a year. You need scouting reports. It's very, very difficult for a team to match up to that zone and be able to beat it. That's why they're so successful in the tournament, because that defense is so intimidating. You got everyone coming at you, and without working the ball around and breaking it down, the open shot you're going to have is a logo 3-pointer, and that's a very low percentage shot. So Houston barely beat Rutgers. Rutgers should have won that game. They choked it late. Were not able to convert and hold them in the late minute. I have Syracuse winning. I don't think Houston will shoot well enough to beat Syracuse. And as Matt mentioned, they don't have someone who can be in the middle of that zone breaking it down. So I think Syracuse wins, and they win pretty easily.
Well, Matt was in class with me when this little factoid came out from our wonderful professor, Matt Park, the voice of the Orange on radio. Check him out when he calls the Houston-Syracuse game later this week. One of the last times that he can remember, a long way back, by the way, in the 80s when Houston was Phi Slamma Jamma, and they came to Syracuse and Syracuse beat them. Syracuse, I believe, didn't play the zone then, play. They did not play the zone then. You'd think that after they've been playing the zone for, like 40 years, that people would be like, oh, a 2-3 zone, probably should prep for that, no matter what, because teams are going to use it at some point. I also have Syracuse winning, though, and not because of the zone, but because you're seeing guys off the bench like Darius Braswell and Jesse Edwards come to the game and make major impacts. Maybe not on the scoring side with Edwards, but he touches the ball literally every possession off an offensive rebound. Whether it's a tip to an opposing player, a tip to one of his own players, or he just grabs it with two hands. The man gets boards. You also have a guy like Alan Griffin who can come off. Well, he'll start, may not play a lot because he's not good in the zone defensive scheme. But he can score. Darius Braswell has been coming on scoring as of late. And Joe Girard, despite all of the pains of Syracuse fans, can hit timely shots. So they have depth there, more than Boeheim thought they were going to have early in the season. And then Buddy just hits 35-foot jumpers. It's nothing. So I will pick Syracuse as well. We'll move on to the second day, though, of the Sweet 16. Gonzaga, favored by 13.5 against Creighton. I'm just going to go throw this out there. I don't think anyone's beaten Gonzaga in this tournament unless they just have everybody get hurt. If you have two of the three of Suggs, Timmy, and Kispert, you're good to go. But they have all three, and they're all very, very much so healthy.
I agree with you that Gonzaga's winning this game, but I wouldn't throw it past Creighton to make it be within 5-6 points in the final couple minutes. This is a Creighton team that played really, really well all season long. They have some really good wins, but I think that maybe it gets lost that they didn't have as good wins as some of the other teams. But when you look at this team, they have scorers all over the place. They're an underrated defensive team this season. It's just who down low is going to contend with Drew Timme. I don't think Kalkbrenner's ready yet. Damian Jefferson, Denzel Mahoney, Christian Bishop, they're all great players as well, but none of them are going to be able to help down inside because Creighton runs a little bit smaller. It's really going to be up to Kalkbrenner to handle Timme down low. I don't think he will, but I think as far as scoring the ball and keeping pace, I'm pretty confident that Creighton can get over 80 points. It's just Gonzaga might get to 90.
Yeah, I agree. I think Gonzaga will win this. It'll be closer than people think, but when you have such a great starting lineup and then you even have pieces off the bench, Gonzaga is an underrated defensive team as well. I think Gonzaga will not have a problem with Creighton. But also interesting to note, everyone was chalking Gonzaga to the Final Four because the other top seeds in that region they had already played and beaten. But Iowa, Kansas, Virginia, they're all gone. They haven't played any of these teams that they're going to have to play. They haven't played USC, haven't played Oregon, haven't played Creighton. So it'll be interesting. I think Gonzaga is going to be faced with some new tests, but I think until they reach – I think the Final Four will be the toughest test for them. Or Oregon might give them some trouble. That'll be a fun game to watch if they do make it there.
Well, we'll get to those Pac-12 powerhouses in a second, but before we get to those, Florida State's playing Michigan. We all thought Michigan would have a tough time with LSU, and for the most part, they did. But they did pull away at the end thanks to the shining star of Michigan Wolverines basketball, one Eli Brooks. We love numbers in the 50s. Fun fact, by the way, did you know that you cannot wear the numbers 6 through 9 in really any spot on a college jersey? You did know that.
It makes
Sam.
sense.
It does, because when the referees go over to call a foul, it's one number here, one number there. So like this would be 15, even though it's reversed for you guys. In the NBA, you can do that. I don't know why. College basketball, that actually is something that I think you're doing right, though, because it makes it a lot easier on the officials to not be like, foul on 79. Yeah, sure. That's great. Don't know why we have those. But yeah, Florida State and Michigan. Michigan, we all thought was going to lose last week. They didn't. Juwan Howard is still going strong. That guy can coach. Like I mentioned it before, Michigan bringing alumnus back to coach is better than any other school bringing an alumnus back to coach. But will they win this one? A close game, at least on betting odds. Michigan favored by 2.5.
I actually think Michigan takes this one. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as 10 or 12 points, but I think that they'll pull away and at least be up enough where Florida State will have to start fouling. I don't think it's going to go down to the end. I think that Michigan down low will be able to handle Florida State. I think that Florida State can keep it close for the first half, but the way that Michigan really shot the ball well in that second half against LSU, they defended as well. I think Florida State's going to have more trouble with them than people think.
I have Florida State in this one. They're one of two Final Four teams I have remaining. That's with Gonzaga. But they're just so well balanced and well coached. Leonard Hamilton, I don't believe he's made a Final Four in his career. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the year he does it. Florida State's got a lot of scores, and Scotty Barnes is someone that not a lot of people have talked about. He quietly won ACC Sixth Man of the Year and Rookie of the Year. Definitely going to be a tough game for Michigan, but I think Florida State will win, just spread out the floor, and I think they're a lot more athletic than Michigan, and it'll give them trouble.
I agree with Sam. I have Florida State as well, solely because I'm picking them because my bracket was busted a while ago. And I picked LSU to go to the Final Four and Georgetown to beat FSU in the round of 32. You all know how that turned out. But Florida State has the size. They have the depth. Michigan doesn't have the depth, especially with Livers out right now. Michigan's been a great team, a great story this year. No one thought they would be this good. Juwan Howard helped them be this good, and they have a very bright future coming up in the Big Ten. But I will take Florida State as well. Finally, we get to everyone's favorite conference to hate, but everyone's conference to respect. But first, I was wrong earlier. UCLA is not playing USC in this round. They draw Alabama. Alabama favored by 6.5. And USC, they have Johnny Juzang, who has played through that ankle injury spectacularly. He has been scoring at a rapid pace. They have Jaime Jaquez, who is like everyone's new favorite person, like in the country. Just like it rolls off the tongue, you know, like Jaime Jaquez is a basketball name, right? No one thinks it's a basketball name, really?
If you want to see it as a basketball name, be my guest. Not the first thing I think of when I hear Jaime Jaquez.
Well, what do you think of?
Maybe like a wrestler.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. Like WWE going in.
Okay. All right. Okay, Matt, who wins? UCLA, Alabama.
I'll go with Alabama. UCLA's played great, but Nate Oates is one of the most underrated and up-and-coming coaches in the country. I've got Bama.
I got Bama too. I'm looking at my stats here. They have 4 guys who score in double figures. Javon Quinterly, Villanova transfer, thriving there, New Jersey product. And then you got Herb Jones, John Petty. You mentioned Shackelford. They're balanced as well, and they're quick. They are a fast-paced team. As much as I'd love UCLA to win and Bill Walton to be right about everything, I think this one's going to be the one where Alabama takes control.
I will go ahead and pick Alabama as well, but I do that with some caution because I did watch Alabama lose to a Missouri team by not shooting well over the first 30 minutes of a game and only shooting hot in the last 10. There is the potential for Alabama to lay an egg like that, and UCLA has been pretty consistent as of late. As Matt mentioned earlier, they were undefeated in the conference of the Pac-12 at some time, and they weren't even ranked in the top 20. So they're a very dangerous team. With Juzang getting healthier by the day, I would expect him to go off. I would expect Hodges to be a contributor, and Riley, that shooter, has finally come on in the tournament as well. So a very dangerous team, but I will take Alabama. And Bill Walton is right about at least one thing, Sam, that a Pac-12 team will win this next game: Oregon and USC. Usually we think about this as a big football matchup, but Oregon they have fresher legs than everyone else because they've only played one tournament game. They didn't look like they had nerves at all because they put up 56 on Iowa in one half. And they're going up against the USC team that probably people think is way better than them because they have the Mobley brothers. And they're going to feel disrespected by that.
Yeah, I'll go. I got Oregon in this one, though. I think that USC, you mentioned, they probably have the advantage down low, but I think that LJ Figueroa and Eugene Morui are just as good enough to at least make it a game so it's not that dominant. And on the perimeter, Chris Duarte and co are going to be too much. I've got the Ducks going on.
I have Oregon as well. Eugenio Maria, Rutgers transfer, LJ Figueroa, St. John's transfer. So they got two guys who I've seen play in person who really weren't, Figueroa more than Omari, but they were not reaching their top potential with their programs that they were with, and they found a home at Oregon, and Chris Duarte is a star. Omari is big down low. He can battle with Mobley. I think he's a little stronger, but Mobley's going to be able to shoot over the top. Yeah, I think Oregon comes away with this one. They shoot much better than USC, and I think in those big moments, they'll take over.
I'm picking Oregon as well. Duarte wears that number 5, guys, and I think you all know who else wore that number 5 the last time Oregon made a deep tournament run. Say it for me, boys. No one. You guys have been working on this website for how long, and you don't know who Tyler Dorsey is? The man was literally named by Reggie Miller Mr. March. The man went off against, I think it was North Carolina. Villanova. No, sorry, Kansas in the Elite Eight, and got the nickname Mr. March because he wasn't carrying the Oregon team, but he was legit, dude. Like, oh my God. Go back and watch highlights from that Oregon-Kansas game. Literally every other highlight is Tyler Dorsey, and then the other highlights are Jordan Bell blocking like 60 shots in that game. That Oregon team was stacked. This Oregon team can run even better than that team could, and I think they win it going away. I'll just leave it at that. Those are our Sweet 16 picks. We're not going to pick the Elite Eight because everybody disagreed on stuff at some point today. But catch us on Instagram Live when we preview the Elite Eight, not on Saturday night, but on Sunday night. It'll be a couple more late nights for us. Sam Bass has a couple of doubleheaders this weekend, but he'll be joining us later in the day. Matt Majinski has always seemed to cop out on Instagram Live since that first one, and I don't know why. And maybe somebody other than Sam and Matt Carner will show up because Matt Carner showed up one time, Sam showed up the rest, and then I was up by myself for a few. Maybe Ari will show up. I don't know. Maybe we'll get Colin Spiker to come out of his rabbit hole and do it too. Maybe Nick Musial will stop by with betting advice. Who knows, guys? But check out this episode. Check out the Instagram Lives. We'll probably do one at, let's see. The first game on Saturday is at 2:40. So let's say around 2 o'clock. Will be the first Instagram Live. Maybe we end up doing one after every game because they're so spaced out. Like it's a wild time, but I will be available pretty much all weekend. Matt should be too, unless there's something academic or he's going to like Delaware or something since he's touring the entire like mid-Atlantic region for whatever reason this semester. But we'll have Instagram Lives for you guys. Send your questions to what you want to talk about in next week's episode when we go over the second weekend of the tournament. That's all we got. Any closing words from you two guys who just so happen to get here? Matt, you can go first because I know you were late and you probably want to leave early too. But please, if you got anything, go ahead and speak now.
Just really, it's been a good tournament so far. But again, I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully some of the better seeded teams go through because I think that's what everyone wants. It's cool to see the upsets, but it's also cool to see those those matchups that when you look at the beginning of the tournament, want to see and really don't hope those teams get upset. And I think we still have a couple of those left.
I have three little things to touch upon. First things first, Virginia will be back. We will be national champions next year.
Oh
Brendon
my
Hodges, you can words. The second,
Why didn't you just bring on Tremaine to say that? For
We're
those
gonna
of
bring
you
him on
who watch the
eventually.
podcast and not the IG lives, Tremaine Blair is like the biggest UVA hype guy I have ever seen on Instagram. The man stopped by our first one previewing the tournament and just like was bleeding like it's navy, right? Like navy and orange. Like
Yep.
that man was. We're gonna get him on an episode at some point because he actually seems to know his stuff. Oh, what? Wow, he actually left early. What a jerk. Anyway, we told him we may get him on an episode later, like next season. There are a couple guys who were actually like pretty cool on Instagram. Brock Miller 305, great guy. Miami, living now, I guess, but Omaha, born and raised. But yeah, what's your other two things, Sam? Matt just left for whatever reason. I don't know why.
I was going to agree with Matt and say that, or disagree with Matt. Sorry. I want the lower seeds to win. I would love an Oral Roberts national champion. That'd be awesome.
I mean, I think what he meant by that is like if they're a team of note, like if Oregon State beats Loyola, he's cool with that. He's also like being kind of petty there too because Syracuse is a lower seed than Houston, so he doesn't really mean that. I wish I could have called him out. That's probably why he left, so I couldn't call him out on it. And then your third thing.
My last thing is that if any team could win, I'd want Syracuse to win because it's always great when the boss is in a good mood and, you know, he can take it easy on us.
You think you're going to get a raise if Syracuse wins the Natty?
I mean, I'm not saying I expect one, but if it happens, I would know why.
Just saying, like, no one's getting a raise here. We're college students covering college sports, guys. This has been the review episode 22, 23, whatever. We'll see you guys this weekend on the IG Lives and next week for our next episode when we cover the second weekend and look forward to the Final Four. Until then, take care, guys. This has been the review.